You have been called
to do good,
to feed the hungry,
to love with action,
to be a light in the darkness,
to love your neighbor,
to teach wisdom,
to walk humbly,
to love mercy,
to care for the least of these.
Will you accept the call?
This is our city.
Our mission.
Visit eriecitymission.org/volunteer to accept the call today.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, 5th next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA 039007.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie, PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
Once a month, the county executive joins us for our monthly meeting. Brenton Davis, County Executive Davis, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you as well.
I tell you what, we had a big announcement last week. I kind of want to start there because this issue of childcare, I talked to you guys about it. You know, we've talked about it here at these microphones. You had a major announcement last week. We're going to get into that in a second. And then the day after, on Wednesday, talked to Governor Josh Shapiro in an exclusive interview here on Talk Erie about childcare, and he's got a whole thing about boosting, childcare workers and opening up slots. They want to open up 35,000 additional slots across the Commonwealth. There's a passion there. There's something there that that county government has said this is hugely important.
Well, 100%. So there's a couple things. You know, there's a lot of misinformation floating out there. So this $2.5 million was in my 2025 budget. You know, the caveat is that council threw a curveball and decided to allow ECRA to be the appropriating body. You know, I vetoed that, not because I don't believe that we need childcare. We 100% do. Childcare is economic development. You know, what worked 20 years ago doesn't necessarily work now, and we need to remove as many barriers and as many excuses as we possibly can for folks wanting to or needing to enter the workforce. You know, I vetoed this specifically not because of the amount. The $2.5 million, if the veto would have carried, we still would have had $2.5 million that I would have been able to leverage with other community partners, and the county would have oversaw the administration of those funds. I only vetoed it because of ECRA's, Auditor General investigation that's going on. This audit is critical. You know, we know that there's tens of millions of dollars of questionable practices and loans and things of that nature that are out there. You know, so I don't think it's prudent. I don't think it's in the best interest of the taxpayers to send millions of dollars to an entity that has questionable practices that's currently under an Auditor General investigation. So, that to me, that's the sole reason why I did it. And we all know, and, the folks out in the county see this for what it is. You know, you've got 3 members of county council that stood behind, ECRA's executive director when he announced his campaign against me. And not only do they oversee the election, which I see as could be potentially a major ethics violation, but, it's really just a poor attempt to stack the deck if they really believe that county taxpayers are that stupid to not see that they're trying to limit everything that the executive can possibly do with any kind of funding, to the point where they want to take away a public information officer, take away my assistant, my administrative assistant in the office. You know, when the county council clerk has more administrative support to run just county council than the executive does to run an entire government, you can't tell me that, you have the best interest of the taxpayers in mind. This is really just very poor politics. They're frustrated to the point where they feel they have to do this. And for that reason, I did veto that. I don't believe any organization that can't be trusted with money or has questionable practices should be getting funding. Whether that be the DEI Commission, whether that be the acts of GDIC trying to self fund through the DEI commission, a few years ago. So I mean, it wasn't that I don't believe in that. It's a simple fact is I think that there's a lot of things up in the air with this audit that you cannot in good conscience give an organization more money, and anybody that does that, they're simply either have their head in the sand or they're playing politics.
But didn't it facilitate another 2.5 million on the behalf of ECRA, so that we have a $5 million now for childcare in Erie.
So 100%. And the only reason that happened is because I required it as a part of the contract negotiation. I placed pressure on ECRA to say, hey, look, we were going to leverage this money. Just like I have with municipal gap, just like I have with the homeless money, just like I have with every dollar out there that we've put out under my administration. So, I mean, there's incredible pressure on the ECRA board to match that funding at a minimum. I mean, you look at what we've been able to do with municipal gap funding. I mean, that's only a 1-to-1 match. I mean, some can say that's a great win. Yeah, I doubled our money. The county executive doubled our money with county gaming revenue. But I mean, with municipal gap funding, I mean, we were doing 4 to 5 to 1. I mean, realistically, if we'd have done it the same way we did municipal gap, I could have turned 4 million into 20 or 25 with other community partners and things of that nature, other grants, other things we can seek. So, I mean, to me, it's a start, but I mean, realistically, you need at least 10 million to kind of get us where we need to be. So it wasn't quite as impactful as what I believe we could do and should have done had that money stay in house. Now, that's not to say that ECRA can't go out and find these community partners. It's not to say that, the administration can't go out and continue to work with other organizations. But, again, those funds are out the door and they're no longer my responsibility. It's my responsibility now to oversee ECRA like it is under the Home Rule Charter. We've given them a task. We've delivered and laid down the gauntlet for ECRA to take $2.5 million of county gaming revenue, match it with the $2.5 million of county ARPA money, and now it's our job to supervise them to ensure that work of the people that they've been assigned gets done.
And what are you hoping gets done? I mean, because it sounds like there are a lot of different pathways, whether it is supplemental salaries or bonuses for certified childcare workers, maybe even to the point of actually building facilities or growing the number of physical plants.
I mean, you got to look at best practices. So I mean, it all comes down to just the slots. If there's not a slot available for somebody to take a kid to get watched, it's elevating the quality. And we invested another $500,000 in in-home childcare. So really, the county's investment is a total of $3 million. That's $250,000 to the city RDA and the Corey RDA to really look at rural and city childcare specific to minorities, new Americans, folks out in the rural areas where these major investments probably aren't going to be as much of a reality. So, I mean, looking at elevating the quality of childcare for in-home providers to elevate that and make sure that our kids are safe. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that we need to look at. But again, the onus falls on ECRA, to make this successful. I mean, I have set the bar. The bare minimum is that they should double this money. That is about as low as I can make this bar for them. I think realistically it should have been a little closer to $15 or $20 million. That would be a substantial investment. And when folks say it's not possible, I call BS because I've already done it. My administration has already done it with the Municipal Gap Fund and every other ARPA fund that we've managed. We've been able to go 3, 4, 5 times the investment. That's what we should be doing. I think the $2.5 million investment, the 1-to-1 match, that's the bare minimum for ECRA. A true leader would go out there and look at ways of how can you get this up in line with where I would have done it in terms of if that veto would have carried. I mean, my goal was $20 million. And, I think that's what ECRA should be shooting for.
With so much blood in the water between the executive branch and council, is it any wonder that anything will get done in 2025 here?
Well, the budget's done. Okay. It is what it is. But I think you look last night, you look at the president's address to Congress. President Trump sat there and looked at Democrats that couldn't even clap for saving the lives of police officers, that couldn't clap for a 13-year-old kid with cancer. You couldn't clap for securing our borders, for cutting down fentanyl. I mean, one thing after the next. And he flat out said, none of these folks will applaud for me. I could, he could cure childhood cancer very much as what I could here locally. These Democrats will not give an inch. I mean, it's nothing more than just tantrums. They're not looking out for the best interests of our country. They're not looking out, just like these local Democrats on council are not looking out for the best interests of taxpayers of Erie County. I mean, that precisely is why, they voted in the last meeting to once again enter into yet another frivolous lawsuit to do what? To sue the county executive to force a tax increase we don't need. So you think about that. Your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, hardworking families out there that can't afford anymore. Council is willing to literally stand on the necks of hardworking taxpayers and our senior citizens to force a tax increase. For what? To play politics. We return millions of dollars. Every year that I've been in office, we return millions of dollars in surplus at the end of every year. That's operating this budget. We don't need this money. They refused to make the cuts in my first budget in 2022. They didn't make those cuts. I said, you got to make cuts. They wouldn't do it. Well, between record inflation, COVID, union wage increases, and all those things, there is no choice. Council forced a tax increase in the 2023 budget. And, that's what you have to do. I mean, you have to pay your people. We have union contracts. That's things that we need to do. But with all that being said, we've still been able to do that. We cut 74 positions from the administration in this budget. What does council do? They hire more people for the warehouse, hire more clerks under themselves, give record pay increases to their own people. And then here we are yet again when they want to pass. They really want folks to believe this illusion that this budget is unstable. It's imbalanced. It's this great big disaster, right? Well, if that is the case, then why on earth, if you have to force to sue taxes in the very same meeting that you're voting to sue to raise taxes, are you trying to pass through more IT positions for county council? That's hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. If you're literally sitting here saying at home, we don't have enough money to pay the mortgage, honey, well, you're not going to go out and buy a Lamborghini. Mm-hmm. That's what these folks are trying to peddle. They really think the taxpayers of Erie County are this dumb. That's the only logical explanation behind it.
I'm trying to understand where we're sitting here. It almost seems like to me that we have a major disagreement on the proper roles of the legislative and the executive branches, and we have a disagreement between the two solicitors, your solicitor in the executive branch, and the county council solicitor. Does this thing need to be batted out at Commonwealth Court?
So 100%, Joel, because and that's why I vetoed it, because I vetoed not only their actions, but I also appealed this to Commonwealth Court. There was a major misinterpretation by a single judge, and there's too much that rides on this. You're talking the next generations. Now, when you see precedents for them striking things from the agenda, or, I even posted on my political page, that you look at the previous history of Dahlkemper and the vetoes of appointments and tax increases and all the different times. I just did a quick Google search of a couple minutes, and you can see Executive Dahlkemper, and it was very clear. I find it very ironic that the Times News very clearly under the Dahlkemper administration writes, all you need 5 votes to override an executive veto. Well, there was no question under the Dahlkemper administration you need 5 votes. Well, now magically under the Davis administration several years later, now magically people don't know what the law is? Come on. Taxpayers are not this stupid. People voted against this extreme leftist liberal agenda, this woke ideology, and this nonsense at the federal level. Like people that are so enraged that you have Donald Trump as a president. It's because they're sick and tired of these lies and all this misinformation being crammed down their throats. He tells the truth the same way that I'm sitting here telling the truth. And they're going to continue to see this at the ballot box in November.
But again, just to be clear here, we're at a different, not just scale, but it's different issues here. We're talking about how a county government is supposed to run. there shouldn't be this much wiggle room. There should be a lot of clarity on how this is supposed to come down.
I think anybody with like a 5th grade reading level, there is clarity. You pick up the home rule charter and it says it takes 4 votes for council majority. It takes majority plus 1, which is 5, to override an executive's veto. The home rule charter very clearly says that the county executive can veto or decrease any budget item. That's any budget item. That's not a decrease. I mean, they're coming up with all these, oh no, that's an increase veto. That makes absolutely no sense. And even now they're trying to convolute this argument that, the budget isn't balanced. So, of course we need to sue and we need to force to raise taxes. It's the job of council. Like when I send a proposed budget down, the executive sends a proposed budget down, council gets to do action sheets. It has to go through the process, and each one of those action sheets are subject to the county executive's veto. That is what they're trying to usurp. If they don't have the 5 votes, they want to strike it from the agenda. This is where they're going to lose their tails in Commonwealth Court. And unfortunately, we've got ARPA funding and some other things that are floating out there that, with all this, all the uncertainty, the only thing they're doing is hurting the 38 municipalities and wasting their time that they have to get these ARPA projects completed. So by them further frustrating the cause, further frustrating the system, is all they're doing is costing themselves. It's folks like Councilman Scatella in Mill Creek and Councilman Drexel out in Harbor Creek in Northeast County. It's all these townships that are like, hey, we've got state-mandated projects and we're counting on this money. Well, you know what? All they're doing is throwing the screws to their own people, and they're doing it to play politics. And if the shot clock expires and some of this money were to have to go back, it's only because of the actions of county council, because they want to play these games. They want to play these games. The reporting has already been done to the Treasury. There's no other allocations for that. That was due December 31st of this past year. There's no change in it. So all this stuff is allocated. So basically all they're saying is, we have this money allocated, these projects, but no, you can't spend it. And I can take the risk, but what does that do? Places the taxpayers on the hook for potentially having to pay things back or whatever it is. So you really find the truth. When people show you who they are, you believe them. And that's exactly what these members of council are doing. When you got somebody like Councilman Drexel or Scatella that wants to consistently vote against their own municipalities, well, guess what? To those folks that live in Mill Creek and Harbor Creek and Green Township and Northeast and all these places that are in their districts, if that shot clock were to run out in this money and we don't get these projects done, guess what? You're going to pay for those projects out of pocket, and you're going to get a tax increase in order to get it done. That's why these programs are effectively the greatest tax increase in history. It saves them from having to pay this in tomorrow's dollar value.
Right. Let's see if we could get on the solution side here. Again, that was a pretty big announcement about childcare, and are we looking at solving some problems with those dollars, incorporating some of the studies at Jefferson Educational, Erie Community Foundation? There's a lot of folks leaning in on this space, right?
I think there's a lot of different things. To me, again, I wouldn't have preferred it go to ECRA. They have no background in, obviously, childcare.
But I did ask Councilman Copeland about his confidence level in ECRA, and he was fully confident.
Well, of course he is. He's the guy running the election that stood behind and endorsed the guy that's running against me on the other side. You got to look at the reality behind what actually happens in this town. We all know this is Erie doing Erie stuff. You have an organization that has no background in childcare. I would have much preferred seeing like the early learning resources center, the folks that do this day in and day out. It was my plan to, obviously we already had a lot of this work done, create the committees, bring the folks together, folks that have no vested interest in the politics, no vested interest in, the businesses, other than seeing them be successful. And I had a committee set to go that they would have made recommendations to, obviously our planning department and said, hey, this is where we recommend you make investments, leverage other funding, write grants, look at, building that pot to $15 or $20 million and making very impactful investments. Again, I can't comment on, what ECRA will do. The ball is now in their court. I've laid out the expectations very clear that at a minimum, this should be a 1-to-1 match to make $2.5 million, $5 million. You know, I mean, to me, like, again, it's our job to supervise that and keep them in compliance with American Rescue Plan reporting and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, that is the job of the ECRA board to do that. Period, point blank.
Yeah.
You know, and whether they're successful or whether not, you know, the time will tell.
What are the other pressing issues that we've got to move the ball forward? Again, there's a lot of conversation about economic development. Again, that came up big time with the governor last week. He's trying to get stuff done is his motto here.
So let's draw a couple parallels. You know, I mean, so you look at what's happened at the federal government, you look at what's happening here. And I was away and I was listening to the governor's address when I was in D.C. here on this show. I mean, there's three very clear things in the governor's agenda. 1, economic development. 2, the delivery of emergency services. And 3, childcare. Those are all things that my administration's been working on. Ironically, those are also 3 things that my political opponent on the other side says that they also want to do. And those are 3 things that the same folks that endorsed them have attempted to cut out of my budget. So how exactly can you support a candidate that says, hey, I'm going to do exactly what Davis is doing, only, I'm not going to be him? I mean, that's literally the logic. If that's the best that you can reason, like, people need to see this is Erie doing Erie stuff. You know, I mean, obviously they've attempted to cut the economic development department. So how can you endorse a candidate that says economic development's a priority? How can you get behind a Democratic governor that says economic development's a priority? Like, they like economic development, just not when Executive Davis does it. They like ambulances, except for when it's Executive Davis who's solving the problem. You know, we like childcare. We just don't want you to solve it. I mean, this is literally the crap that they want you to swallow. You know, and I mean, to me, anybody that's got half a brain in their head knows this is Erie doing Erie stuff. You know, and I've had a lot of Democrats reach out to me and say, look, we're looking forward to voting for you in the general. Like, you're getting stuff done, the homeless initiatives, the tiny homes. You know, we had EMS, 18% drop call rate when I came into office. It fluctuates anywhere from 1% to 3%, but it's typically right around 1% right now.
That's moving the ball forward.
That's huge.
Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethee.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA.
Quickfill gasoline is made right here in America. United Refining Company, who operates Quickfill, refines its gasoline from North American crude oil in Warren, Pennsylvania. When you buy United Refining Company gasoline at Quickfill, you keep jobs and businesses in America, and you keep American families strong. You don't need to send your money overseas when you buy gasoline. Buy American-made gasoline at Quickfill. Quickfill, driving America.
From baggage claim to pajamas in 10 minutes. Erie International Airport. Fly with ERI.com.
Fly Erie International Airport to Charlotte on American Airlines, your nonstop gateway to the world. Also, we have Breeze Airways flying nonstop to Orlando and Tampa, Florida. A great low-cost carrier providing excellent service to the regional community. Fly Erie International for your travel needs.
Fly with ERI.com.
I did get a question earlier, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it is a question that has come up over the past month about whether or not Pleasant Ridge is on Erie Waterworks service. Do you know what kind of utilities that the county home gets?
So I mean, obviously there's public water there.
There's public water.
There's public water there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why that would matter. You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. It's somebody's asking that, and actually, that's not the first time we've asked that question here.
But I mean, speaking of Pleasant Ridge, you know, I mean, to me, this just goes to show the local media. You know, I mean, folks want to whine and cry about the use of social media, or they want to talk. I mean, council really wants to focus on these minuscule things that mean nothing to the average taxpayer, while there's not been a single media outlet that's covered the $13.5 million that Pleasant Ridge owes the taxpayers right now. You know, I put that out on the county's social media. You know, some folks call that political, or I call that transparency. I mean, the taxpayers have a right to know.
All right. So why would they? Why would they owe the taxpayers money?
So this is the way the reimbursements work. So let's just say every time a reimbursement comes out, the taxpayers of Erie County front $5 million to the state. We give $5 million to the state, in which the state pays Pleasant Ridge 10.
Okay.
And then the Pleasant Ridge, when they receive that 10, gives us our 5 back.
Gotcha.
They've done that since creation. So you look at that. Now, what's happened is in 2023, you know, and you look at back into it, even COVID, you know, the Dahlkemper administration, I think, forgave something as far as, I think, $9 million, or there's a $6 million forgiveness, $9 million. So if you look at the state of the county's budget, and, you know, where you look at the tax increase that we had to put into effect in 2023,
right.
I mean, when you're forgiven $9 million and $6 million, and then coming up with another $2 million to front for this and $1 million for that, like, it all adds up. You know, that could have been $27, $28, $30 million that we returned to the funds. You know, that if had those funds not been forgiven, you know, and I mean, there is a responsibility, you know, obviously to take care of our most indigent, but there's a reason why most of the counties in Pennsylvania have gotten away from that. Keep in mind, Pleasant Ridge was built in 1920. You know, we didn't have the Lecoms, we didn't have the Sisters of St. Joseph, we didn't have all these private care homes and other facilities, you know, so there are ways that we can do community-based care, that we can take care of the residents, you know, but instead of grandma having to leave Fairview or Corey or Girard or Northeast, you could put them in a home and have them being taken care of in their community where they're from, as opposed to shipping somebody from Corey or Albion to Fairview, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but at the point, if there's any entity, you know, and keep in mind, the members of council are the board of trustees. The county executive is only an ex officio, which means I don't get a vote. They can absolutely run that place into the ground, and I don't get a vote. The only thing I can do is make a stink and say, you guys owe us some money. You know, but it's up to them. Obviously, they control the budget. They can say, hey, screw you, executive. You know, we're going to continue to keep forgiving and take this loss. So you got to look at a lot of the reasons why our budget is the way that it is. You know, and don't get me wrong, we have a very healthy tens of millions of dollars in reserves. So how can you sit on tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money that, you know, you've obviously taxed to get them there? And then keep in mind, we made $1.6 million in federal inmates due to a contract I signed last year. You know, anywhere that I can make money with our community assets, those are savings. That $1.6 million is covering, you know, CO overtime and, you know, cost portions of the county's prison roof and things of that nature that you can stave off tax increases. You know, so you look at that. I have a responsibility as the county executive to sound the alarm. You know, and that's also holding this board of trustees accountable. It's not saying that it's not a valiant cause. It's not saying that, like, hey, we need to throw this thing away. But what I'm saying is if you've got something that's bleeding out and taking major losses for $13.5 million currently, and keep in mind, we just got a $5 million payment from them at the end of January after we called them on the carpet. That would have been $18.5 million owed to us. So if you're consistently needing money, you have capital improvement projects that we need to fund. How on earth are you going to make up this lost payments? You know, I just don't see a pathway.
Hasn't the county home been a source of many administrations wrestling with it over the years? That's why we no longer have the East Side deal.
Well, I mean, and that was the solution to cut it down. You got to remember, our census isn't even full.
Right.
So the taxpayers of Erie County are paying 100% of the bills, and we're only at 50% of capacity.
But wouldn't you say that the taxpayers have also said that this is something that matches our values, and so
nobody's ever said that. It's never been on the ballot. What you have is politicians kicking the can down the road, just like every other maintenance project, just like every other thing. They've never taken an honest look and said, hey, look, you know, we need to find a better solution that not only takes care of our most vulnerable residents, but what about your vulnerable residents that are senior citizens out there trying to stay in their house?
You're right.
And when you owe them, okay, it's $13.5 million. Well, what happens when it's $25 million in a year or two? Like, at what point do you allow something to essentially sink the taxpayers? You know, and we're not even talking about roofs that need to be done. We're not talking about, the Legionnaire's disease and the hundreds of thousands of dollars we spent out there purifying the water systems this year. You know, deferred maintenance costs, you know, elevators in the county, you know, courthouse. I mean, all these different things, $2 million of prison roofs that are getting done. You know, there's all these different deferred maintenance costs that are going to come to roost, you know, and I'm saying that there's a way. It doesn't mean that the county taxpayers need to be in the nursing home business. You know, we don't get the same reimbursements that the private sector does. We don't have the same overhead and costs that they do. And when you're running at 50% capacity, you rely on those reimbursements. So again, it comes down to this. You have 300 beds. So you're paying for 100% of the cost of the overhead, but you only have 150 of those beds full. You're only at 50%.
Okay, why is that? Is there any explanation?
Well, they're gonna say it's staffing. They're gonna say it's. I mean, you got to also look at how the building is cut up. I mean, those are old style rooms. Those residents were meant to be 4 people to a room with a shared restroom. That's not even best practice for nursing homes any longer. Crawford County just sold theirs. You know, I mean, there's a lot of places in the liability. So think about it.
Do we need to do a study? Do we need to pick up and have some kind of a solution to this dilemma?
that's why I've already engaged, you know. So a couple weeks ago, once I brought this into light, you know, I brought in a consulting firm, and I've requested all the information from the Board of Trustees in Pleasant Ridge to say, look, you're going to provide this information to these subject matter experts. We're going to figure out, you know, what is the pathway, and these are the options that we're going to present to that board of directors. You know, I mean, you look at it, when you've got shared restrooms where residents need to leave their rooms and walk down the hall, and you look almost every week, somebody's falling, somebody's getting hurt. I mean, there's increased liabilities. It's not the most, you know, best environment for our elderly, you know, and you got to really think at the end of the day, what's best for these folks, but also what's best for the elderly that are paying for these folks to be there. You know, like, we have a responsibility to represent both interests here. And whether that's us being in the nursing home business or not, that's yet to be determined. But sitting again for decades doing nothing and pretending we don't have a problem while running up a bill that eventually taxpayers are going to have to pay, because at the end of the day, the taxpayers of Erie County are responsible for paying that $13.5 million, whether they can pay it back or not. And that's up to county council, because they're the board of directors or board of trustees for Pleasant Ridge Manor.
I got to ask you something. Again, this is going to come from out of the blue, but it does go to human services and this gap that we have. Whereas you have children in the foster care system, right? They stay there until they age out, right? I don't know if it's 18 or 19, but they have to leave the foster care system, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we have, or what should we have as a county to capture them and to be able to keep some kind of services going so
we do have that.
Okay.
So take like Northwest PA Family Services. You know, I mean, there's structured living arrangements. So I mean, we don't just kick these kids out at 18. You know, I mean, there's a point in time where we had programs that were at Edinburgh University in the dorms where they could go to school for free. They had social workers, blended case managers. So there's definitely still a lot of like guardrails and protections.
But a lot of these kids end up homeless too, though.
I mean, if that's the case, that would be by choice. Okay. You know what I mean? Obviously, once they turn 18, there's nothing you can do to say, hey, look, adults, you know, you're an adult. You know, so if you want to double middle finger and walk away from the system, you know, there's nothing we can do to an adult to make them take services. But these young adults or, you know, adjudicated youth that are maybe 14, 15, 16, whatever, I mean, there are independent living programs that provide services, provide a place to stay, provide a structured environment, and give them some life skills training. And like, you know, the family services, that's one example of that.
Okay, well that's good to know, because it just seems like, you know, we just had a dump truck and we dumped off these kids.
Yeah, and that's not at all the case. No.
Tell us what's how the. I mean, we're getting warmer now. Tell us about the overnight emergency shelter, how that's all working.
So it's working great. So there's a lot of great feedback, So I mean, the first year of our neighbor's place in the Community Resilience Center has been a raging success. I mean, it's nothing but positive feedback, I mean, that's, I'd say predominantly most of the feedback. I mean, generally at least once a week I stop in and talk to, either Kurt and the folks at Yuma or, the overflow shelter folks at night. I just randomly pop in, see, how things are going, talk to the residents, the unhoused residents that are using it. And I'd say the vast majority of folks that were saying, you know what, like, and it really warms my heart, when you have folks that say, hey, look, I was a Democrat, I voted on the other side, but man, my vote was wrong. Like, you really do care about these folks. Like, this is innovative. Nobody's ever done something like this before. And for the first time in history, nobody has to sleep in the streets in Erie County for a cold winter. And we achieved that. And not only that, but we're building on that. Wraparound services, the tiny homes. Our 15th tiny home has been built. So now we're taking a little bit of a break to kind of get these 15 in place before we start on the 10 two-story models. Really work with the workforce development programs. We've signed on board Crawford County VOTEC, Erie County VOTEC. We're working with the community college to also be a partner for the trades construction. And, it's really doing this cost effectively. We've got a person from San Diego that reached out and said, hey, we've got a lot of experience. Maybe we can help you drive your unit costs down. And I jumped on a Teams call with this guy about 2 weeks ago. And once I told him, he's like, hey, we do these 200 square foot units for about $69,000 a piece. He's like, I'd like to help you get your costs down. And I kind of chuckled. And the guy said, like, what are you laughing? I said, ours are 360 square feet, and I'm doing it for less than $20,000. Wow. And he's like, I'm going to get on a plane here in the first couple weeks of March. I'm going to come out and see how you're doing it. So now we've got folks from California that have been doing this for 10, 15 years coming out here to learn from us on how we're doing this with workforce development programs and, how we've been able to drive unit costs down, buying on the margin and things of that nature. So, I mean, really just being a builder and really being able to do things cheap and understanding the process has been a benefit. But, these folks that, say like, hey, I'm a Democrat and, I voted the other way the other time, I'm voting for you this time. And it's because you're showing that you can get stuff done, just like Governor Shapiro, getting stuff done. Talk is great. Anybody can say they're a program administrator. Anybody can spend money. You know what I mean? But really at the end of the day, where's the data? Where's the results and what's the return? And when you get a company from a program from California that has a unit cost of almost $70,000 and you're doing it a third of the size bigger and for a third of the price, that shows we're getting stuff done. I mean, you can't possibly do it any less expensive unless you produce the materials yourself.
Can we scale that to beyond, like housing crisis type things? There just seems to be a real shortage both in the city and in the boroughs and the townships, really, of like that sweet spot $150,000 to $200,000 single family home or townhouse. I mean, this is the bell I keep ringing.
Well, I mean,
like,
housing.
Why does it cost $450,000 to build a house?
Well, I mean, you think about it. I mean, look at the cost of labor. And for government to get in, and as soon as you touch prevailing rate, I mean, forget about it. Yeah. And I mean, look at the cost of lumber and the pending tariffs and all the other things. I mean, I built my garage myself, and by the time I bought the steel and everything, and it's like maybe 2,500 square feet with electrical and all that. I mean, I've got $100,000 in it. I mean, like, that's doing it myself. Like, you can't hire these things done. So I mean, that's really where it's key is like leaning on your experience. Getting as much volunteer labor and providing a real world experience for these young adults and high school kids to give back to the community. I mean, these are really critical. And again, it comes back to the data. Anybody can spend money and say, oh, look, we did a Main Street program. Oh, here's $5,000. Let Jimmy down the street paint your storefront. Yeah, I mean, that's all good and well. But I mean, what's the ROI to the community? And as we continue to get these tiny homes out in Corey, Union City, Albion, Northeast, 2 or 3 units here and there. It's my goal to have 50 of these built by the end of the year. We've already got 15 done, and we haven't even started. I mean, like it's still snowing.
But the key is the volunteer labor.
It's delivering the results.
Let's get a quick phone call in here. Hi, you're live on Talk Erie with the county executive.
How's it going, gentlemen? I'm sorry, Joel. I'm coming back in. You put the bat signal out.
Yeah, I did.
Homes, cheap homes, cheap homes. Now, these tiny homes, and I'm not attacking this. I think it's a great idea. I've looked into perhaps doing this to try and get the cost down. But now, do you have to put a foundation? Are these things on just up on 6x6s or something? Are they a block foundation? I mean, how are they attached to the ground? Are you exempt somehow from certain building codes?
So the answer is, no. So, we're building all these to code because, we want these students to, withstand a real world building inspection, number one. And number two, we're building them to the HUD standard because that's the long-term sustainability piece, is being able to maintain them, who's responsible. That way it's not the taxpayers of Erie County digging into the county wallet to fix these things. It's building the partnerships with the county housing authority. But like when we send vouchers to a hotel, now we're not taking up a hotel room, for unhoused folks. We're providing a long-term or at least transitional type housing opportunity
their own place.
For these folks.
They have their own place.
Yeah,
and they have their own place. Now my question is, the foundation, is it on a slab or are you putting in actual...
No, so that's the whole point of this, is to be able to obviously transport these things. So one, there is a footer. So pylons and things of that nature to make sure that it stays where it needs to be. But let's just say, for instance, this issue were to shift, or you need to maybe move some of these things around one day. It's a matter of disconnecting the water, the sewer, and the electricity, pulling two pipes and a wire, and you can suck this thing up onto a flatbed, and you can move it somewhere else.
I appreciate it, Gino.
That's
Thank
really
you,
the
man.
goal.
All right. Keep up the good.
All right, I appreciate that. He says keep up the good work there. All right, I've got about a minute or two with the county executive. What are you focusing on here in the month of March?
So there's a lot of things. It's getting these, again, keeping on the homeless thing, keeping on EMS, moving the ball forward, making sure that.
What's the latest on EMS? What do we need?
So now we've got the study for the final zone for the South County. That's Corey, Union City. Really working to continue to regionalize this system. We've got Northeast Township and the folks out east signing on Greenfield, just wanting to sign on board with the East County platform. It's being able to make strategic investments in a regionalized system, driving down the cost, increasing the efficiency, and providing ambulances when and where folks need it. It's finally rowing in a single direction.
Are we doing any better on our response times?
We're light years better.
Okay.
You look at where we were when I came into office in 2022 to where we are now. It's not even the same EMS system. It's still in crisis, but it takes time.
Yeah.
But I would argue when you go from 18% drop calls down to less than 1%, that's a huge improvement. And then when you look at we put 80 or maybe close to 90 some paramedics and EMTs out there in the last 2 years trained. We've put out millions of dollars, $1.5 million in wages and other supports. It's strategic investments towards this regionalized system. When you get all these communities working together, now you don't have an ambulance driving from the city of Erie, Emergicare driving out the Northeast when there's one sitting in Harbor Creek like before. It was a disorganized system and disarray of many different people funding and responding in different directions. Well, now we've got a hold of the entire system, and all these communities are working together. And that results in, one, better service, faster response times, but greater savings to the taxpayers of Erie County, which means we can do more with less.
Okay. We're going to leave it there. County Executive Brenton Davis here for his monthly meeting. We appreciate you taking the time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.